Okay, let's get started. So thanks everybody for joining. So just to introduce what we're going to do today. So you've got two of us here. My name's Scott and you've got Connor. We're both data viz specialists here at Flourish. And so typically we do customer training and help customers with projects. And elections are always a big time where we're helping lots of people out visualizing elections. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And so if I just go you through what we're going to cover. So first of all, we're just going to talk about what Flourish is, give a little bit of background on what the tool is, what it can do. And then we'll go a little bit more hands-on. We'll show you kind of how to choose what template, what visualization to use. And we'll go through a couple of kind of real world examples, particularly using maps to visualize election data. We're also going to look at custom pop-ups. So that's a way to kind of really enrich your graphics by sort of hovering over data points and getting more information. And we'll have some time for questions at the end. You should also all have access to the chat. So if you want to ask questions on the way through, do feel free to pop them in the chat. There's two of us here, so we can answer your questions as we go along. Okay, so what is Flourish? So that's a good question. So Flourish is a data visualization tool, and it allows you to create kind of stunning charts, maps, interactive content to engage your users. And what's crucial is there's no coding required. So this isn't a tool you have to kind of build stuff from scratch. You can very quickly build up interactive graphics and share them across a variety of different mediums. And they look great on all kinds of different devices, screen sizes, all that kind of stuff. So that's what we're going to go through today. So to give you a bit of a flavor of what you can produce, Flourish is built around different visualization templates. So it's kind of going in, choosing which kind of visual you want to build, and then you would apply your data to it and bring out a visualization. So the kind of typical ones we would do, and these are kind of what a lot of people will put together, will be things like these interactive graphics, where you've got a filter or some kind of interactivity where you can change the chart, you can hover over, you can view different parts on the chart. We also have animated charts. So these are really popular. These are our racing bar charts and enables you to kind of look at data through time. As you can see, the bars move around and animate and reshuffle through time. So that's really easy to make just by putting your data in and sharing it online. We also have kind of more advanced chart types. So what we're looking at here is a Sankey chart. So these are visualizations that are a little bit more difficult to build in your kind of typical tool like Excel, but they're really easy to build in Flourish, and you can sort of get involved and hover over and access different parts of the graphic and so on. Okay. So maps. We've got lots of different maps in Flourish as well. Again, they're pretty easy to build and you can build some quite interesting results. We've got an example here where we're looking at Airbnb and we're going through and sort of visualizing where different people have rented Airbnbs through time. So really easy just to put that data in and get some really stunning results. Okay, we've also got interactive content. So this is where you can kind of build out things like interactive kind of diagrams, load up your own image, and then turn it into something that's interactive and viewable. So let's get a little bit into elections. So we do have quite a few different templates that are kind of specific to elections and to polling and to results and so on. So you can see here, we've kind of mocked up a little page that you might have, a landing page where you can start to bring to life your kind of election data. And the way that a lot of people use it will be to kind of both look at information before the election, so things like polling and track polls in the run-up to the election. And then on election night, they might kind of have these live graphics, and Flourish enables you to link up to things like Google Sheets, so you can enter your polling results as they come in and have a kind of live experience where the web page is updating as the results come through on the night. And then after the election, you've got all the analysis of where the seats went, where the polling moved, all that sort of stuff. So you've got it covered in those kind of three different periods. The kinds of templates which kind of work best, I guess, for elections would be things like our table template. So you've got an example here, and it enables you up in this kind of filter box here to really filter down, find the constituency or the electorate that's most interesting to your reader, and they can go and find the results really easily. We can also build in things like annotations into Flourish. So this can be really useful in these polling charts to give a little bit more context on sort of where there's been moves, inflection points in the polling, give your readers some context around why that's important and where those areas have moved. And then we've also got kind of more in-depth type charts. So this one here is our data explorer, and you can see here it kind of enables you to really kind of dig in and kind of click through and explore the data as you go through. Okay, so what we've done now is just to put together a few little examples of specifically Australian data, maybe for the election coming up, and a lot of these are based around the last election. So here we've got a map, and this is a map that's available in Flourish for you to just open up. We've got all the electorates set up and so on, and then you can just load your data in and apply kind of whatever analysis you want to do to the chart. And that's something that Connor's going to go through in a minute to show you kind of exactly how you would do that. We've also got, as I said, sort of specific templates which work specifically for elections. So this one here is our Parliament chart. So kind of we've probably all seen this kind of chart, really effective at showing where the seats are. And we've got this kind of line showing where the majority is. You can see when they tip over into getting majority. So this works, again, really well, either kind of as the election results come in and you can start to see those dots stack up, or after the election, so you can show where the things have stacked up. This one also works quite well at comparing the different years, so you can switch between sort of the last election and the latest one to show the kind of change in the distribution of the seats across a couple of different elections. And then, as I mentioned, we've got tables. So we've got a similar table to the one we looked at before, but with Australian data here. And this table, again, enables you to search, so you can look for, your users can look for their particular electorate, or you can kind of sort the table so you can see who had the biggest margin or the smallest margins, that kind of stuff. Polling data, so there's lots of different ways of showing polling data. We had just a line chart in the previous example, but this one's a little bit more complex. It's using our scatter chart template to show the individual polls, and then the line is some sort of average or some sort of weighted moving average through time. So you can see kind of the range of the individual polls, and then also view the average, so people get a little bit more context on those individual numbers. And again, you can sort of hover over each of these points and so on. It doesn't just also obviously have to be election data. So Flourish is really good at, providing other kinds of data that might give you context to the background to the election. So whether that's kind of economic data or population data, that kind of stuff. So it doesn't have to all be about the election results. So here, for example, we're looking at inflation and GDP. So if there's particular kind of issues, maybe immigration, those kinds of things that you want to show, those are really useful charts to be able to put together as well to back up your pieces. So those are the kinds of things you can create. What can you do with them? So as we've been going through here, these have all been embedded in Canva. So that's one way of doing it. And you can certainly then use Canva to take those Flourish visualizations and sort of adapt them for things like social media, for reports. You can also, obviously with Flourish, it's really good at embedding onto websites as well. So you can publish your chart, you get an embed link, you can put it onto your website, and it'll be fully responsive for mobile, for different screen sizes. It's got all the accessibility and stuff like that. So you don't have to worry about kind of building that kind of stuff yourself. So lots of different ways of sharing the data and so on. So that's kind of an introduction to Flourish. As I say, if there's any questions on any of that, just pop it into the chat. But what we're going to do now is kind of really actually show you Flourish itself. And I'm going to hand over to Connor to go through the template chooser, how we kind of choose what kind of template we want to use. And then he's going to show you an example of putting a map together. So I'm going to stop sharing and hand it over to Kyle.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Scott. I'll just share my screen. And before we jump on into the Flourish program itself, I just wanted to go through and highlight some of the interactive elements that we might not have been able to see there real quickly. So in Flourish, it's all about interactivity and creating a narrative with your charts. Here we just have a cluster of the 118th Congress, but with Flourish, we can make them animated stories, begin to make sense of that data, and begin to actually pick out the key findings from this data. And then at the very end, we can let people explore the data themselves and create something. And so this idea of using layered information through interactivity and then animation to create a narrative is what we're going to try and do to rebuild a chart like this. So making something like this is actually really, really easy in Flourish. It's just as easy to make a map as it is to make a Parliament chart or anything else. It all follows the exact same process. So I'm going to jump into the platform now and show you what it actually looks like. So this is the Flourish landing page. For those of you who haven't used Flourish before, this is where you will log in and see all of the projects you're working on, the maps, the stories, anything else at all. You have shared folders that can be shared across an entire team or an entire company. And then you have personal folders, which are unique to just yourself. When you want to create something new in Flourish, you can head over to this new visualizations button, which brings you through to our template chooser page. So if you are fairly new to Flourish and you're just exploring, this would be the page I recommend getting the most familiar with. It is essentially a long list of everything that Flourish can do. So we have a lot of different templates for a lot of different purposes, maps, 3D globes, heat maps, everything in between. This is obviously a lot of stuff, so you can filter it by a type of chart, or you could filter it by the purpose of chart, which is especially helpful if you're trying to think on a narrative that you're trying to show. Let's say you wanted to change over time, you can filter for that, and we'll show you everything that we have that could represent change over time. With all of these charts, we have a brief description of that chart type, why it's useful and where you might want to use it. And each one of these is what we call a starting point. So these are preloaded templates, essentially, that come with example data. For example, if I click on a connected dot plot, and let's say I've never used this before in Flourish, it will bring me through to the Flourish editor. And in the Flourish editor, it will come preloaded with example data. So here I have a fully built chart. The reason why the example data is good is because it lets me check out what kind of data works for this type of chart. So if I jump over to the data section of the Flourish editor, I can see what type of data works here, but most importantly, I can see the shape that that data needs to be for this type of chart. So for us, we actually want to just make a map. So I can go back to the Flourish template chooser, and I have a number of different map templates that I can choose from. Projection maps, 3D maps, marker maps, and globe. For what we're going to do now, we just need a simple chloropleth map. So we can go with our projection map, where we have a ton of different countries' shapefiles that you can use as starting points. We offer all of these shapefiles so that you don't need to find your own, but you can add your own shapefiles if you want to. For us, we're going to start with Australia constituencies. And just like the previous dot plot chart that we saw, it will come preloaded with example data so you can see what kind of data will work for this map and what shape that data needs to be in. So while that's loading, in the data tab, here we go. We have a few things that is worth noting that are going on in the Flourish data section. There are different tabs for different types of data that you might add. So we can add lines, which might be useful for doing things like a disputed border. We have points, which are longitude and latitude, and you can scale or color them by a value. And then we have regions geometry. So in Flourish, all of our regions are GeoJSON shapefiles. You can upload your own GeoJSON shapefiles. And these are usually fairly easy to find on a lot of government websites. But like I said before, Flourish does have a lot of different map options already. So hopefully you shouldn't need to upload your own shapefiles. We should have some already. If there is a specific breakdown that you use all the time and we don't have, do feel free to message us and we can add it to our offerings so that everyone has access to it. The final tab is the one where your data is going to go. So this is the region's data that we're going to be making our chloropleth map with. On this side, we have what we call column bindings in Flourish. This is essentially us telling Flourish what to do with each column of data. For example, in this one, we're using column B, the names of all the locations, as the ID. That ID is going to match these values with a specific region that has the same name in our geometry. So it's important to have an ID that matches in both the geometry, the shape files, and in the IDs so that Flourish can actually draw the data to the correct location. I'm then going to color by my column C, which is a value, and that will make my default map. If I want to get my own data in, I can either select everything and delete it. I have a drop down here where I can clear the sheet. And then I can either upload my data from a CSV or Excel file. I can also connect it to a live URL. So if you're using a premium account, then you can connect this to a live Google Sheets so that it can be constantly updating with live data, something that might be extremely useful for an election. But for now, I'm just going to do the simple thing, and I can just copy and paste my data straight in. So I have my data here. I'm just going to take all four of these columns and then paste them in. This pop-up is just letting me know that Flourish is going to interpret my data. It's marked column B as text data, column B as text, and column C as text, and column D as numerical data. And then I just need to make sure that Flourish is using each column correctly. I want to make sure that my electorate, my names are my IDs. And I'm going to keep the party name as a name here, and possibly I could use it as a label, but for now I'm going to leave it. And then I'm going to color by the party as well. So we can see down in the preview, I have a functional map that is coloring by the correct things, which means I can go into my preview settings. Now that the data's in, I have my data here, and I can begin to make design decisions to explain the point that I want to make and convey the message that I want to say as clearly as possible. All of the settings in Flourish will be concertinaed in this side panel here. Everything you can click on, it's fairly self-explanatory. If you want to change regions, it's in regions. If you don't know where anything is, there is a search for settings bar. If I say, look for color, it will show me any setting that has something to do with color, and will blur out everything else. If I wanted to change the colors that we're using here, in my regions layer, I can change from the default, and there'll be a bunch of different colors. I could edit these color palettes, where I can change the order that the colors are being assigned. I could change the color exactly on a swatch, or I could put in a specific hex code. Since you're probably going to be wanting to use the official party colors, you can create a little color palette where you can put in the official party hex codes. You could also use custom overrides to color them exactly correctly. So let's say I wanted to color LIB. I can say, let's color LIB, and I'm going to make it red. And I can type this in plain English, hex value or an RGB value, and it will override my color palette and highlight exactly what I want to talk about. That's really all you need to do to build a simple chloropleth map. You can choose whether you want to have things like these points on or off, and they can all be controlled in a very similar way to the regions. You can change their color, you can change their sizes, you can change what's working with them and whether they have labels or not. At the bottom, you can place a source, and that can be a URL so that it can be a clickable hyperlink. That's really useful if you want to paste where your data is coming from. You can also add things like a header and a subtitle. And then you can change the styles of these. It's worth noting that if you are in a premium account, you will probably have a theme set up. A theme will come preloaded with all of the correct colors, the brand fonts, and anything else that you want. For example, if I was in the FT, you can see we have a bunch of different Financial Times newsroom defaults. If I was in the default one, it would come with the logo, the colors, everything would be styled in a way that's appropriate to the FT, and it would come preloaded with a few different FT color palettes to choose from. But again, this is only for premium accounts to have the themes set up. When you're happy with your chart and you want to get it out of Flourish, there's kind of a few different things you can do. So first, you're going to want to give it a name so you can find it. And then you're going to want to export it. So if I click on export and publish, there are a few different options you can do. If you want it as a static image, you can download it as an image. I think this is a premium feature. It comes in a few different formats, and you can directly change the size that you want it to be. And it will resize accordingly, and you can download it. This is a static, not interactive, not animated version of it, but useful for some situations. If you want it to remain interactive and animated, you can either add it to Canva, and I'll do a little bit more about that in just a minute, or you can publish to share and embed. You can put it behind a password wall or allow people to duplicate the project and the data if they want to. When you publish it, it will give you two publish options. The first is a URL link. If you open this is a link you can just copy and paste and send through to a colleague so that they can review your chart, check it out, offer any suggestions on things to change. When you are happy with your chart and you want to actually go live with it, then you need to embed it straight on your website. This div script embed can be copied and pasted directly into your CMS, and it will put everything that is in this preview window straight into your site. The div will automatically scale to different screen sizes. You can test it out to make sure that your headers, your labels, and everything is still visible on mobile, tablet, or on larger desktops. If the div script embed does not work within your CMS for one reason or another, then there are some more options that you can choose. You can go for an AMP iframe or a regular iframe. We do, however, recommend that you choose the div script embed because that's the most responsive to different screen sizes. So with all of that, that's how you get your chart made very quickly and then exported. And do remember that if you have a live account, you can connect this directly to a live online data source as well. That is just the simple chloropleth chart. And there's a lot more that you can do with maps going past a basic chloropleth. So a few examples for you of what you could do in Flourish to go a stage further. We have a lot of different options for different ways of creating a scale. We can have it as categorical, you could make a linear gradient, or you could create bins that group things together, and you can determine the number of bins and the cutoff points of those bins, or you can use diverging color ranges that can be really useful to help pick out key differences between different regions and areas. You can also use hex maps. So we have a number of different hex maps available as starting points, or you can create your own hex map and upload them if you want to as well. And again, if there is a hex map that you find yourself using quite a lot that we don't offer as a standard, do feel free to contact us and we can add it into the system. So with all of these maps, you may have noticed the information when I hover over things, and those are our pop-ups. They happen when you hover. And here we can see a quite complex pop-up where we have a chart showing different parties and how they're winning. And then we also have images of all of the different candidates. This is unique to each area with different images, different candidates, different colors, different everything that we want. These pop-ups can be made this customized with hyperlinks and everything else because they accept full HTML and CSS. So if you are relatively comfortable using HTML and CSS, you can add really anything you want into these pop-ups so they can show any information that you want to, any hyperlinks, any videos, any images, any embedded websites. To give you an idea of some other things you could do with these custom pop-ups, here I have a map of a project for the UK. We have a number of different dots. This can be used as a filter as well. And this Flourish map will get more and more detailed the more that I zoom into it. So if I zoom into Bristol, it should go all the way down to street level so I could get the location of an individual business. This map doesn't just have pop-ups that happen when I hover over a point, but it also has what we call a panel, which happens when you click on a point. If I click on this region, this panel has opened up and it's brought me another chart. It's highlighted the region that I clicked on, and if I hover over that, it tells me a further chart with an extra breakdown. All of these charts are still interactive, and if I click on a different region, then it highlights that region, and I can see the breakdown of spending for that region. And again, all of these are still fully interactive, and I can get as much or as little information as is relevant to me. The whole point of Flourish's interactivity is it allows you to layer information so you don't need everything to be relevant all at one time, and you can actually let the reader decide what is most relevant for them, but still give them the option of all of the information if they want to go further into it. So as a part of this, we will send you a copy of everything that we've shown you today. There are tons of different examples that you can have a look at. You can open them up, see how they work, and get some inspiration from all of these different things. We have gone through a nowhere near conclusive list of everything that Flourish can do. There is so much more to explore, and I would recommend taking a moment to look through Flourish, maybe look through some of these examples. You can filter them by different types. Let's say if you wanted a racing line chart, you can open it up, have a look at how these racing line charts could be done, and get some inspiration. We also have a ton of different resources. We have tons of webinars that we do pretty regularly. All of our previous webinars are available on YouTube. We do offer training for customers as well. I would recommend our blog as a great source of inspiration for everything that you can do. We have a number of really good blog posts that are specifically about visualizing the elections. We are also available on social media where you'll see a number of different things. And if you do want to use social media with Flourish, we would recommend using Canva. We actually use Canva to bring all of our Flourish visuals into Canva and then use Canva for all of the different design options. Here, for example, I've made a map of the UK, and then I've used Canva to add all of my annotations, to do a customized legend, and to really design out everything that Flourish can't do outside of the visuals. Then in Canva, I can just export this as an already made thing that is perfect for Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever it is. While we're on that, it's a fairly recent development, but you can post Flourish interactive visualizations directly onto LinkedIn articles now. So you can create an article with your animated Flourish visuals and stories, and again, allow people to dive deeper or not as deep into the visualization as much as they want to. This also works for things like maps. So if anyone's planning on doing anything for social media, remember that it works fully interactively on LinkedIn, and Canva is a wonderful place to bring it straight into. There is a Flourish app within Canva that will link your Flourish account directly with your Canva account, so you have access to all of your Flourish visuals inside of Canva as well. So we've rushed through quite a lot of stuff. Is there any questions that people particularly have that haven't been answered in the chat already? I haven't seen the chat myself. Perhaps we can have some time to go through a little bit of those.
Hey, Connor, that's great. So we've been going through a few questions in the chat. Some of them were around kind of whether we can set up some more of the so the hex map you looked at particularly. We can look at maybe setting up an Australian version of that one. That seemed something that would be really useful for people.
Yeah. Yeah, we can absolutely set up more types of maps if there's further breakdowns. I think we already have 3 types of breakdowns for Australia on, I think, territories and electorates. But we can absolutely add more. If there's anything that would be of particular interest to you, we can do that. So it looks like there's some people asking the actual steps to get something into Canva from Flourish. So I'll just share my screen again and just demo that. So I can do it just on this page. Canva obviously has the flexibility to design anything I want, and Flourish has the flexibility to make the charts that I want. I've already got the Flourish app, but if you need to get it, you can click on apps and you can search for Flourish. It looks like this with a little star. You can click on it and it will ask to connect your account. It should do that in just a basic click as long as you're logged in and Flourish. And then I have all of the charts that I'm working on here. It is ordered by the ones that I'm most recently working on, but I can search for it. If I just click on something that I've made in Flourish, it will drag into Canva. It will be fully interactive within Canva. I can move it around. I can resize things. And from here, I can then add other Canva elements if I want to draw attention to certain parts of the chart, add extra annotations, and really anything that I want to. So I hope that that answers some of those questions. And for anyone who wants to go a little bit deeper into actually editing the charts, what we would recommend if you want to create, let's say, high quality vector versions of a bar chart, when you download the image of a chart, you can do it as an SVG and it will maintain all of the different bars as separate elements. That's probably the easiest way if you want to bring it through to something like Affinity or to InDesign or any Adobe program, and then edit things that way if you need a really, really custom idea. So one thing that we can talk about while we're here and we have a little bit of time is what to do past an individual chart. So I'll share my screen again and I'll show you what's called a Flourish story. So let's go back to Flourish. And let's say I want to make a little story about the UK elections. I've got this map that I've just made when it loads up. There we go. But I want to do something that highlights certain aspects of the chart or maybe draws attention to certain areas. What I can do, instead of exporting it as an individual chart, I can create a story with it. So when I create a story, it brings me through to what's called the Flourish Story Editor. The story editor is essentially a miniature presentation, or you can think of it as frames of animation. And it allows you to take one chart or multiple charts, and it will remember any interactions you've had with them. So I have slides on one side here. If I duplicate them, I could say, show the results from 2017 on the first chart and 2019 on the second slide. I could also highlight a specific region if I want to. Let's say I click here. Flourish will remember that I've clicked there, and on slide 3, it's always going to show that pop-up. So in this way, I can begin to build a bit of a narrative around my charts. Whoa, what is that? And then I can even add other charts if I want to as well. So let's say I want to add a hierarchy chart. So I have this fun little hierarchy chart I made that's about some product managers and a hierarchy where everyone is starting with J. Flourish will remember any interactions I do, so I could maybe zoom in to one department and have a look at HR. And then in another department, I could compare HR to product. And now in each one of these slides, Flourish will animate between the two, focusing on the thing that I want to talk about. I could then match that with some custom text. And I have some basic options for editing with this text. And I would have my little mini story here, where I could flip between different types of charts, different maps, everything else. And if I wanted to, I could even go a step further. Let's say remove these maps and I'll keep it just the hierarchy. If I don't want people to have to click through my story, what I could do is make it an auto-playing story. When I do that, I get the option to let it play on load and to loop. And you'll see it's added a play button and a slide duration to each one of my charts. I could change that slide duration, let's say 3 seconds. And because I've chosen for it to play on loop, if I was to publish this, I wouldn't need to interact with it to get it to run through the story. It would just load up and begin playing through the story at the set interval of 3 seconds that I've done for each one of the slides. You can think of this like a GIF, but this is fully resizable to any screen, and the reader can still pause and interact with things, even if they're not in the story itself. People could have a look at something that we haven't said in the story, like design, and then the moment that the story continues, it will go on the set story that we have set in the story editor. So again, another great way to really walk people through a narrative with your information and to then show them the information that might be relevant to them without having to make a judgment call on showing them everything that maybe isn't relevant to them. One other thing to mention is our scrolly. The default story editor is these little buttons or the play button for an auto-playing story. But if you make it into a scrolly, you'll see the text has gone into the middle. And if I was to republish this, then reload this, it, as a scrolly, is the exact same story, but it's changing how I interact with it. Now there's no text bar at the top, and instead we have the text scrolling through the middle on my trackpad or my mouse wheel. And as I scroll down, that's the trigger that goes from slide 1 to 2 to 3. This is a really nice way of doing it. This is a really popular format, and you can actually export a story in the exact same way that you would an individual chart. So you can have multiple charts in a story, animated, telling a specific story and narrative, and you can put multiple stories on one article or one page that are all designed to reinforce a specific point that backs up one of your larger points.
Thanks, Connor. There was another question in the Q&A actually about, you mentioned being able to embed Flourish charts in LinkedIn. So I thought we'd just quickly show you that one. So if I just share my screen this time. So this is a LinkedIn article, and just to show you kind of how easy it is to set up or embed a Flourish chart. So let's say I've got this particular, we looked at this one before, this hex map for the UK. If I want to put that into a Flourish article, it really is as simple as just getting this public Flourish link from the export and publish section here. So if I just copy that link, and then if I go into my LinkedIn article, so I've put a kind of headline, I could obviously put my text and things in here. And then there's an option here to embed, and you'd literally just paste that embed link in the same way you would do with a YouTube video or something like that. And it should then just pop it in. And then when I publish that article, it will be fully kind of interactive and all that stuff. So really super easy to do that one. See if there's any other questions. One question actually, Connor, was if you wanted to just show sort of one US state with its counties, so kind of removing all of the other states. I don't know if that's one you can quickly show.
Yes, I can absolutely show that. So let me just pull up an example.
Yeah, so it's just a case of kind of basically deleting the parts of the map that you don't want. So kind of
exactly. So all of the shape files in Flourish are completely editable, just like any other data. So let's say I want to show the US. Where are we? Yeah, let's go for just a simple states map, and I'll use this as an example. Let's say I don't want to show all of the US, I only want one particular state, let's say Texas, but we don't have a starting point for just Texas. So you could take the map of all of the US that has all of the states. In our data, in our geometry, each row is one of our shapefiles. So essentially all I need is to delete everything except Texas. I can do that in sort of standard way. I can right click, remove rows, add rows, columns, whatever it might be. Or I can just highlight everything and delete and leave behind only Texas. And I've got a couple of points as well. If I was to clear those points, we can have our regions, and I've got only Texas here. That's basically all you need to do if you want one specific area. Our starting points aren't set in stone, they are just starting points. So if you see a starting point that has the information that you need, but other stuff, you can just go in, delete everything that you don't need, and keep, let's say, just Texas. I think in this one, we could do the same with the data. Have everything that we need and just get rid of everything. So we can keep just that. Hope that answers the question for you.
Yeah, that's great. There was another question from Miguel here, looking at how we might depict a single electorate's performance across 2 to 3 elections and what sort of templates we try. I mean, I think there's quite a few different potential options there. I mean, one of the ways that you can do it in the template chooser, so let me just share my screen again quickly, is when we go into this template chooser and we decide, okay, I want to build a new visualization, there are lots of different templates in here. So it can be a bit sort of, which one do I use? So one of the things you can choose here over on the left is there's a filter. And so if it's change over time, which you wanted to show, so you're wanting to show a change in the electorate, if you click on that one, it'll give you all of the different templates in Flourish, which are good for showing change over time in data. So there's the kind of obvious ones, I guess, of like a line chart or something, but there are other ones as well. So, I mean, it could be something like you could do one of these cool kind of custom grid layouts that we have for the US here, but I mean, in theory, we could do one for Australia as well. And then each little kind of section might be a little mini chart for each constituency or electorate showing kind of how they move through time. So that might be one way. You could obviously also think of perhaps doing a sort of animated map, a little bit like that Airbnb one, but You can see here some of these maps.
Scott, you're not sharing screen, by the way.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Let's try again. So yeah, this is the template chooser I was mentioning. And on the left-hand side here, you've got this option to choose the purpose. So we were talking about change through time. And so when I click on that, so if I go from all to change through time, it gives us just the templates which we think are best for that particular sort of kind of data arrangement. So things you could use, as I mentioned, like a line chart or something. You could use this custom grid option. So here we've got the US, but you could do it for Australia. We've got the individual electorates and kind of little mini charts for each one. Or there are maps that kind of work well through time. So you can have a kind of time slider, and you could see kind of the swing through time or something like that. So various different options, I think, for showing change through time.
So we've got sort of about 10 minutes left. If there's any sort of final questions on anything that we've gone through today that you want any clarification on, now is the time. And remember as well, we will send email with hopefully the recording of this, the presentation that we've gone through, and a few different resources that are really useful specifically for visualizing elections. We have a couple different blog posts on visualizing the elections in the US and the UK, but everything is completely relevant. And we also have a resources page that is specifically all about the charts that Flourish has that are the most applicable to an election. And we'll send you all of those links as well.
Yeah, there was just one question I saw just a bit further up that I missed from Fern asking the stories that you were putting together, whether they can be put into a Canva slide, and the answer is yes to that one. So yeah, they work really well in Canva slides. And actually one of the things you can do with stories is to set them up to autoplay. So that can be really effective. So you get that kind of almost like a video playing, but it's also interactive as well. So it kind of works on two levels. So that works really well in Canva.
Scott, would you be able to quickly demo a bar chart with filters?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, okay, let's do that. So I've got an example of one of those. Let's have a look. So filters in Flourish enable you to kind of, instead of just looking at one view of the data, to actually break that down and switch between different views. So this bar chart here is, we're looking at movies, and we've got, instead of having sort of two bars for each individual movie, we've actually got a little button to flick between two options. So we've got the Rotten Tomatoes score. So this is kind of how it did at the box office. Sorry, how it does kind of on the reviews, and then you've got the box office, how much money it made here. And now we can sort of switch between these two using a filter. So typically, if you were to set this data up, as I mentioned, you've got two series here. That would usually come in as two bars. So you can imagine sort of one bar for each. But obviously what we want to do here is, because they're quite different metrics, one's in percentage, one's in kind of dollars, it makes sense to kind of have it as a filter and switch between the two. So what we can do here is, as I click between the two, you now see the bars animate nicely, and you can see, particularly because we've highlighted this particular movie that maybe our story's about, you can see it kind of moves between those two metrics. So again, that might be something you could do with election data as well. Things like the animation, you can also control down in the settings here. So at the moment, we've got this animation set up. It's in milliseconds, and as you go around Flourish, if I hover over this little question mark, it gives you a bit more information about the settings. So if I want to make that animation a bit more snappy, I could take that down to say 800. And then as I click between the two, you can see now that animation is a bit quicker. And how do you make these filters? So there is another setting up here, control and filters. And all I've done is gone in here and put this option here for a series filter on. So a series filter or a column filter. Basically, if we go into the data, you can see it's just filtering between those two columns of data. You will notice also there is another filter here. So Flourish has the option to have two different types of filters, and this one is a row filter. And that's just slightly different in that what we've got here, is a column, and it's got some categorical data in it. So this is the genre of the movie, but you could also use this one, the studio perhaps. And what this one is, it's kind of a little bit more like a database. So now as I click between these two, I could say, okay, well, I only want to look at comedy films, and it will just reorganize the data and just show those anything in that data set that's got comedy in that particular associated row, or you can set it up to show all of them. Let's go back to action. So that's filters. There was a question there about highlighting another line. So yeah, you can do that. So the way that that's set up, let me just share my screen again. So the way that that bar is highlighted is actually using the color section in the settings here. So you can see what we've got here is, I think Connor used this on the map before, this idea of custom overrides. So we've actually got two movies here, which we're putting in red, but I could change that if I wanted to. So if I wanted this, the other bar to be, let's choose fireproof. You can now see that that one's in red as well, and we can decide, okay, well, we don't want that one in red now. So pretty easy.
Could
to
you
override.
also demo the racing line or bar chart? Because that's the one that allows the user to highlight the one that they're looking at. I think the racing line chart would probably be good.
Yeah, racing line chart, let's go into that. So one of the ways you can do in the template here is if you type in line, it'll give you all the things that have got lines. So it's another way of sort of searching through the many different templates. So line chart race, again, there's a few different options here. And in the template chooser, these are essentially for each template, we've got these kind of little mini starting points. So you can choose the one that's sort of most appropriate. Let's just choose this simple one here. And the way that it's set up is the data just comes in the same way. In this one, it's set up slightly differently in that you have the parties down the left-hand side here, and then we've got through time, their kind of performance, I guess. And so if we look now at what this one does, it kind of loads the data through time, and you get this kind of racing line effect. So we could either have it as the score or the rank, so they're kind of changing their rank through time. And this little replay button lets you start again at any particular point. And as in terms of sort of highlighting them, the user can hover over and just sort of isolate each one. Questions?
Does anyone else have any last questions? We have a few minutes left. Super simple questions are all good. How to integrate Flourish into Canva as an app. Pricing. So Flourish and Canva are priced separately. I can't talk too much to how much everything costs. If you are interested in buying either one, I would recommend reaching out to them and seeing what offers and things are available. But in terms of building integrated Flourish into Canva, the Flourish app already exists in Canva. It's a free app to get in Canva. You can test it out with both the free Canva and the free Flourish accounts, and they will already integrate as free accounts. And then if you would like, you can then upgrade to the more premium subscriptions and get the full suite of different features that they both offer. Does that answer your question, Corinne?
I can maybe just quickly show again the sort of how it works in Canva and how the Flourish app works. So on the left-hand side here, as Connor said, you just load that in as an app. in Canva. And then down this side here, you've got essentially access to all of the Flourish charts that you've built in the Flourish editor. So you can search for them in here, and you can see the ones that we've just been building. So if I want that Australian election template, I just click on the left here, and it just pops it into whatever Canva doc or presentation or whatever it is I'm working on. And then I can come in here and I can sort of then interact with it in Canva. If I want to go back then and sort of edit it, I can then click on here and then go back and edit it back into the back in the Flourish editor itself. So they kind of talk to each other, the two apps.
And do remember that we have a whole team of people who are here to help you learn and use Flourish. I think it's already been sent, but we have hundreds of different help documents on how to do everything we've done today and hundreds of other different little tasks, everything from how to color in one line in a line chart through to what is this type of chart and why would I want to use it. So I think with that, if there's no more questions, we'll give it a minute for final calls, but thank you everyone for coming. I hope that this was really useful, and hopefully we'll be seeing more of your Flourish creations and maps and everything over the election cycle.